um, sorry, I just got the recording in progress thing, that the cover is based on. So the cover of the book that I think you may have seen when Luke showed it to you is based on a piece from the book. So I'm going to share that. So bear with me while I share my screen. I should give you a warning that this deals with kind of COVID things, loss, etc. So this is called R naught values of select airborne viruses and emotions. R naught is the basic reproduction number of viral or bacterial infection and or emotional states. It represents the expected number of cases generated by one infected individual in a population where all individuals are susceptible to infection. R naught applies exclusively to a situation in which no other individuals are infected, no individuals are immunized, and there are no deliberate interventions in transmission. It should not be confused with the effective reproduction number, R, which represents the number of cases produced in a population where individuals may be immune and or steps are being taken to control the spread of the infection. By definition, R naught cannot be modified by vaccination campaigns, therapy, or other interventions. The black circle at the center is one infected person. The red circles around it are how many people will then be infected by them. First, the feeling of overwhelming solitude you experience when standing alone in an empty apartment with parquet floors and pale walls waiting for the moving truck to arrive. MERS, or Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. Happiness. Rhinovirus in midsummer. COVID-19. Hope. SARS. The spike of rage you experience when someone steps in front of you while you are walking quickly towards a meeting for which you are already late. Sadness. So that's the first piece, and forms the cover of the book. The second piece I'd like to read from is the second last piece in the book, which is a novelette, I guess, a piece of autofiction. It's called 107 Missiles and Autofiction in Fragments. And it starts off with, I guess, some bullying and some comic books, and I won't get to it, but sort of head sideways towards things like nuclear proliferation and Reagan's stance on things like missile defense, hence the title. But I'm just going to start off and work my way through it with my remaining time. So, and it is numbered fragments. So fragment 1. When I was in grade 4, I asked my father to teach me how to fight. I was being picked on at school, and I thought that he would show me how to punch or elbow or apply an arm lock, that he would teach me the secret formula of toughness. He tried to pretend that I was joking, but I meant it. I was 9 and this mattered. I insisted. He turned serious and told me it was better to walk away. Violence creates problems, he said. It doesn't solve them. I thought he was hiding something, deliberately holding back the tricks that he had learned and I hadn't, and I wouldn't leave him alone. He was on his hands and knees, weeding the garden in front of the house, pulling the plants, shaking the dirt off their roots and throwing them into a plastic bucket. The weeds wilted quickly in the heat. I pleaded and he relented. He took off his gloves and showed me how to sidestep someone and kick out their feet, how to lean left or right, use your hands to direct them and dart at a leg. He invited me towards him. I rushed him and he tripped me out of the grass by the driveway, and again and twice more, but I wasn't satisfied. I protested. It wouldn't work. It was too easy, too obvious, and I could tell that he was using his grown body to get the advantage over me. 2. While I ran and tripped on the lawn in front of the house, my father smiled in the calm, detached way that he smiled at me when I did something that wasn't wrong, but that he didn't approve of or understand. He was serene, unreachable. He looked like a character in the G.I. Joe comics that my brother and I collected. The latest issue of Special Missions had introduced 3 new Joes. One of them was a medic called Lifeline, a pacifist who got tangled in his parachute and had to be cut down, and who wouldn't engage in violence, not even when the Joes were ambushed and outgunned. The team was captured by river pirates, and they were forced to draw straws to pick a champion to fight for their lives. Lifeline drew the short straw. He faced down a hulking giant of a man, and the Joes thought they were going to die. They said it out loud in front of Lifeline. But then they discovered the medic was a master of Aikido. The comic explained that it was a Zen martial art with no offensive moves. The purpose, the narration told my brother and me, is to redirect violent energy away from oneself. And the giant charged, and over again, Lifeline sent him sprawling across the deck of the riverboat. The men's bodies bent and arched. Black lines of force exploded out of them. The giant howled in frustration, and Lifeline key-eyed in letters that were dark and electric with the loudness of their cries. In the final panel of the fight, the giant sailed head first into the mast. Lifeline was turned with his back to the giant and bent at the waist at a 90-degree angle. His right arm was extended straight over his shoulder in line with his torso. The giant was flying over him with his limbs flung out and his mouth wrenched to an oval of rage. The mast was about to break off at the base. 3. Even as a child, I could tell that what I saw in the climactic panels of that issue of Special Missions was impossible. Lifeline and the giant were posed like mannequins. Lifeline was too small. The giant was too big. Leverage didn't make sense of his wild flight or its shattering impact. I couldn't believe in it, in the effortlessness with which Lifeline sent the giant sailing over him, or the force with which he landed. Not the way I believed in the other Joes, in Duke, Snake Eyes, and Roadblock, in swords that were razor sharp, in guns that blasted everything in their path, in all the dense and thrilling possibilities of violence, and in the salvation it offered. 4. I was an obvious target at school. My family lived in a farmhouse in the country at the end of a dead-end gravel road, but we weren't farmers. We were separate from the community, and my parents ordered our lives according to a set of principles they had agreed on between themselves. 5. The house we lived in was both old and new. In 1974, my parents bought 50 acres of mixed farmland and bush 25 minutes north of Owen Sound and left behind Toronto and the lives they had started to build there for good. The property was sandwiched between the escarpment that fell away on the south and east sides in a sheer face of limestone, with a lip of turf curling over the top and a low forested ridge on the west. There wasn't any road access. They had to park their Volkswagen Bug on the soft shoulder where concession 24 came to an abrupt halt. The car listed dangerously to one side and brushed its mirror against the cattails that grew in the ditch. They crossed the ditch on a plank and followed a faint, badly overgrown footpath that dipped down the ridge and cut through the swamp that separated the northern corner of the plot of land from the end of the concession road before turning south and winding through Pussy Willow and Dogwood to half a dozen small fields that had once grown corn and grain, but were now filled with weeds and wildflowers and fit only for pasture. I imagine that first time they saw it was in the late August afternoon. They were hot and tired from the drive and the walk through the swamp that had both taken longer than they had expected. The shadows were reaching out from the ridge, and the light was turning yellow and catching the insects buzzing over and settling onto the tangle of weeds and grass and wildflowers that tugged at my parents' legs. I see the insects lift and set the air alive with the small and darting bodies as they wade through the fields. I imagine my parents stopping and standing there in the middle of the first field, in that late afternoon light, in that wide and humming silence, and the knowledge of how far they are away from the car waiting by the road, how far from their lives in Toronto and from everything they have known until that moment, and deciding this almost unreachable place, this half-wild solitude we can make our own, this is what we want. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Clap, clap, clap. Hey, Luke, I guess it's my turn. I don't see him anymore. Where'd he go? Looks like it's just me. Thanks, Aaron. So many medical things for me to toss around there. All right, well, I pull poet duty here at Gordon Hill Press. Sorry for the smarm, but it's just my plastic demeanor for you all tonight, or this afternoon. You saw a link to Aaron's book down below. Please do pick it up. Really innovative, linguistically interesting, and and fun, structurally fun text. Okay, so now I would like to introduce MLA Chernoff. So MLA is a poet I've been reading for some years. I first came across her work as part of a submission I couldn't quite secure. It was snapped up sooner than I could act, and it made sense based on how good it was, you know. I love their wordplay, their sense of sound, and their intellect, especially, all in one. Plus, their work was so subversive. It was so politically active and humorous and sly. Thus, I was delighted when they later submitted a manuscript to Gordon Hill. And you're about to hear just how good MLA is, and how they, and maybe we, might answer their own metapoetic question from Theorem 000 on the abolition of the statute, which goes, the impotence of thought is its infinite culpability, an event without remainder, a generic whatever, a who we must woo. It is the way we endlessly circumscribe the contours of our plumped and pompous faces, asking, when did you become so various? MLA.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me? Is this okay? Are you mad at me? Okay. Can you hear this? I'm just really curious. You can't hear that. Okay. That's unfortunate. Okay, I'll just read acapella acoustic. No DJ, no beat boop, no robot, no AI, no Grimes reading Communist Manifesto or the meaning of Mark Fisher. Okay, so I'm gonna read from this book. It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful. And so thank you everybody. Where's the book? Okay, I'm just gonna set up quickly. My manager wanted a front row seat. So there we go, tiny horse for you. Okay, I will start with the very first poem in the collection. It's called Exposed, MLA Chernoff, a Rothschild Deep State Neo-Marxist Protocols, Rare Footage 2019. And this was a real passion project of mine. If you search for that video on YouTube, you won't find anything but size Gangnam Style, so go for that. Somebody once hold me, the world is gonna hold me. Please hold me. I'm so hot for you, I could melt steel beams. In any and all cases, you're an asshole. Splay into my bittersweets, sweaty. There's no need to squelch it to me, this slaying invocation vocating me wildly. Simply call me off and awful my call. Gillette This was published by Bad Books in the spring of 1991. Curse Thirsty was published by Gapariot Press in the spring of 1968. But then, my two rabbis sub your Reddit and cosplay Little Ponies, a dialectic deeply stated. A Wall Street deep keep nixed, unplated. Oops, kill him with mindness, they say. You can bet your bottom donaire they've hacked your bank account. Nay, they've elongated your musk to a dearth of grimy SoundClouds. Mean seized meanly, no hard feelies to your instant heelies. Shrieking in treks to orphan all the donkeys. It's full-on rage, these callous round blouses I sweat and feather lightly. Talk birdie to me and stand 30,000 plateaued paces left of right so we can shake in the sensuous. It's a living. Are we not millennials? We are Devo. In the end, it matters if it's a poem or a praxis. If the seas do seek a crop of sits with which to drop a topple, just remember my yawning yoni and the code word will appear. Thesis is listening. I'll kiss you, I'll miss you, I'll piss you at the safe house. In logic, you are my tenses, whence the hush of my symptom, splitting yes and no. Oops, smelling in spells, I've lost my deposit. It's the return of the repressed, rimming round the posy, rocket full of. Have you tried exercising? Are you hydrated? Sorry we didn't get a chance to talk at the show last night. I was super out of it, and the profile you were trying to view has been suspended because it goes against our community guidelines. That's one poem, thanks. I guess I'll do another. Let's see. This one is called How to Kiss Like a Spinozist. Oh, enema of the skin. There is only one poem in this collection, and it is this one. A cross-legged ink blot swaying on command, triangulating $40 facial serum into the laying of a busy training day, learning to oust a cop to deadland with glistening brow and heavy-handed knuckleballing, the kind of Molotov that you wouldn't kiss your dermatologist with. You're scratching up a funky mix of yes! We really do exist. We come from sun, dust, and hashtags left clothespined in blind-nosing winter, where the noise won't cancel itself with nuance-blocking butt plugs, blunt shy of metaphor, lulling into the meridian of a flaming squad car. Simply and overtly, you make your parents proud, but I'm just as loud. I ask of you to polish my lens over and over again. Pink my affordances with a ray of the spray. Let me dash the day away in bed dread and yeast head. Listen, I need you to yeet this my way. A poem not simply about depression, but a poem that is depression itself. A poem that sees me and feels the way my body can monetize itself in the final analysis of $141.25 per session per capita. Accessing grief and peeling back the anger, a foreskin regrowing itself in the tick of a sad, sappy day. Rain? Oh, mommy, no. That's no good. We can't go outside today. In affordance of this frankhood, I must sashay unto you like a proof becoming truth, crunching in affordances, a tax paying itself over in duplication, duplicitous debt, and horny matrimony, pairing our parents' salaries, salivating cuts whose names are windswept and forever kept. Sashay them all of your fucks away. It's 2019, and you bet you ought a second to none that time-trapped metronome of an ass, aka the metrophobic slur hurled at you on the subway that awakened your old longing for the new I got a lot. If anyone can guess what reference that is, that'd be so fun. Maybe I'll tell you later. This portrait of your fuse traversing unfamiliar terrain is encrypted with a cutting red tape and roping red flags full of mythic fire, the predations of Fordism and social devastation, heretofore a post-Fordism in and as the bloody tarmac bluing out the sedan, economic euphoria that sanctions a society within a society. We live in a society, so I've heard, on a planetary scale, on a podium of razors. The best, the image of prophecy a man can get. From the Stoic to the makeshift arts fund it took to publish selfhood. Do Pagliacci even eat ass? That's my biggest question. It's been on my mind for quite some time. Eateries and eternities of shit, shant, and shunned, memories of spring spraining my sprung, who is third, the third unicorn or otherwise, I am not myself until I call myself on a dusty old landmine. Je est un otter, reads Rambo once. In conclusion, affections and predilections don't fuck around. They don't enlighten the bed-red night of a middle-bound torso in brine and lean, insisting you awaken the sweet sheet as son and as child, testifying titular, spaying testaments to squeamishness. Bold and mutable are those gorge-mouthed buffoons pillowing the deathbed. Though shaken, you'll let it dawn on you, like mustard in the mild, that the odds are getting good. This is no lie. The odds are getting good. When false friends pucker up to translate the desk, conditionals spew out stewy premises, breaknecks drip anaphora from the edge of shower heads into the hole of a night unveiling. While stowaways rest upon foamed tress, chortling worlds gnash themselves between elbows and marched out mellows that brink and maim, engulfing aspects of grief, loves that once loved and losses that once lost. Yes, it's like that, old-timey pish-posh. Belatedly, I ask you to take each pore and fill it with each pore. Death is a tooth among strangers, upended by dentists and ontologists every which where. Listen, my delicious Greek Jew, I don't mean to sound logocentric, but words are facialized fossils, skying the page with another poem about poems, ampersands about ampersands. They are true, like truths that you ain't never heard before. Welcome to the Lawrence Plaza. We've really got it all. I am a Toronto Price, enticing from us to child wicked propensities. I love the family, but I worry that they lack edipality. Oy vey. I am the triangle of filth. You can't have it all. My empire of girth. Get ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll be right back. I think I'll stop there. Unless you want more, I don't know. You tell me what to do. I'll do anything for you. Literally, like anything.
Do one more, sure.
Okay.
We want more. People
Oh
are saying
wow.
more.
If you say so, I
The
suppose.
reviews are in. More.
Okay, I'll read another fun one. It's called "Does My Ass Reveal Itself as the Horizon?" It's just Heidegger. These axioms. Now that's the tightness. For simplicity's sake, a found grounded escape, so we can gaggle their slimed up gaiety masks and really just put a sock in it. I'm angry, about to jack off to a poem about myself. I would like that if you could please call me by your wah, lest I start to wah. Angst? Oh, you mean Mondays? And who ordered this fucking lasagna? Not in my counter culture. There's only one. Did you eat allemands? So thus the French squelch as structured both did and did not walk the streets. It all rings on in repetitive traditions of muttering a not on a nothing, making and taking all the mighty to prove the haters wrath is a club kid of foam roaming trenched up ceremonies of becoming party monster and other spicy pronouns, obviously. And I'm just a poet, and life is a nightmare. I'm just the space between the O and the E. Here are my desires. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bravo. Hard to follow that. I got nothing. That was amazing. And everybody's kind of chiming in here in the chat, which I love to read and get distracted by. Sorry. MLA basking the praise. It is long and lengthy. And we're going to move on to Kevin. Kevin's up to the challenge. I just had that nightmare where I thought my microphone was off. You know that one. I first met in 2006, and at that point, as he is now, and very keen to develop. Thanks, recording in progress. It's been a pleasure seeing this collection develop over the years. And I got to say, I acted more so as a shepherd and sorter of its poems rather than radical intervener. So, as in the quote I used in MLA's introduction, these poems are so very various. And keeping on the modern poetic theme, perhaps Kevin may resolve his collection's central questions for us here just in the next few minutes, such as, is poetry the organization of hope? Somewhat, and is remote chaos without order possible amidst viral binaries? Okay, with that task, Kevin, please take it away.
Thanks, Shane. The Italian word for high waves doubles as the word for horses. Something in the coastal imagination blent the curve of mains with the force of the wind, I suppose. So floating south from Salerno to Vito Valentina, in the sleeper, I see skeins of white-faced ponies, ceremonial in bells, gallop across the silent blue-green Tyrrhenian Sea. Children ample in music, dreaming on the beaches, no final revelation. When my son was a boy, his theater teacher, a woman who'd spent 16 months in her 20s tending stables, told his mother and me that actors are like teenagers, are like horses, capable of bucking the very sky, but with the nervous system of a hummingbird. She must have sensed we didn't know what to make of him, the turbulence of his Septembers. I think of him, how in the bakery in Naples last week, a woman, her hand clutching a crucifix of brackish olive wood on a thin chain, told me that God could call him back, no trace of discomfort in her eyes. And as the man singing in the next car, conscious of the crack of lightning over the bay on dim summer nights when nothing sings except the residue of misspent afternoons, and God could call him back, call it pain is bread. Call it the universe is a rain-streaked bakery. Call it when he was in hospital, it wasn't me who asked for the semi-private room. His neighbor sang every night to shepherd his dreaming. He was a studio musician, trained in decades of French horn. A young man still, they were unable to prevent his cancer cell subdivision. 64th notes had been his nemesis professionally, he joked. It was the way my son would comfort us at 4 a.m. He would comfort us on a Tuesday up night sick, lift an intubated hand, smiling around the nasal cannula, give a thumbs up. The way any patient recited their diagnosis, the Latin, a Colosseum falling. I see why Dostoevsky flung Raskolnikov at the flaying that broke Nietzsche, as waves of white horses buck in their breaking on the shore towards God could speak, she said, clutching his only son begotten in olive wood. The words in the valley, I fell upon the earth. Valley, the color comes, there is a decision describes. Philosopher turns the earth in its hands, tatters, muttering, 1/3 of your life is spent getting used to gravity. Sun, fireflies in the forest, like opinions, take their meter from lovers, not Lethe. You are mistaken. Run. This is not an elegy, because the world is full of elegies, and I am tired of consoling and being consoled. During the pandemic, I learned that we yearn to witness human behavior most, perhaps when relieved of the exhausting obligations of speaking and behaving. In the neurochemical flush, accidents of eye contact and permutations of performance compel in the place formerly known as public, where one endeavors to order a cup of coffee. And amid the old blear slant of light angling through the window at dawn, I learned that the impulse to apply deodorant is a will to alienation, even as the cosmic stupor of lit dust churning by the sill takes it upon itself to tell us what we're meant to do to be together here. And we, desperate for but oblivious to the how of it, smear that wet duck's feather tuft of hair with incorporated scent, like the woman to whom I read these words first. She is lifting her arms to vector light peach-colored linen over her auburn hair and supple bareness until she sees and wrinkles her nose in mock offense at you. There's a line of Earl Birney's asking to be spoken. With dusk, I am caught peering over the holly hedge at the dogwood. A grad student of sociology, she walks barefoot across the sunlit hardwood of her comfortable village loft to lift the kettle for chamomile with a drop of ethical honey. Thinking of how the gazes which crosshatch public places affect women's awareness of their personal bodies. The dog soliloquizes its bird shimmering upwards from the neighbor's backyard's maple tree into the endless overcast overhead, with particular focus on the shift in perception caused among women wearing or not wearing a brassiere, such that a positive consequence of this pandemic, she is thinking, tilting the kettle over the mugs, consists in the radical reduction in the number of breasts subject to unwelcome scrutiny in public places. A train is passing by and the sound it makes is not consistent. Sounds, she thinks, plural. Like what? After lighting beeswax candles and turning off the fan-connected bathroom light last night, the hot water-filled bathtub invokes resonant plurality, she thinks, providing the same improving element to the speaker of poems that the shower provides, for whatever reason, to the singer of songs. Of course, Hass is saying, we stand to reason and lie down to dream. 2. The poems in question, Henrik Norbrandt's When We Leave Each Other, sent across all the air over the Atlantic by my second cousin, Karen, an historian and teacher in Copenhagen, had been translated from the Danish to pour out clear, cold, and mineral tanged as spring water. When we met some summers ago in Montreal, I'd asked her husband about his countrymen's inductive tradition of deer hunting in a dialect self-satisfied with the reading I had been doing as an undergraduate. Shouldn't one question the morality of hunting from a position of abundance rather than one of necessity? And he had replied, if you don't ask such questions of yourself, you shouldn't hunt. With a directness and candor that made me long to be inducted into that country I haven't seen and fear I may never. Earlier that day, Karen asked what foods I preferred for breakfast. Coffee, eggs, bacon, toast. Ah, that sort of thing, she replied, unable to hide the disappointment in her face regarding this youth flung irretrievably from the bosom of Scandinavian influence into the flabby, blotched arms of late capitalist settler fare. Karen, I write to you now to say that I've learned of our many unobtrusive cereals, of our jams and rolls, and of the cheeses stippled with muesli. I sit indolent and biddable before a laptop, following the endless issuance of morbid witticism characteristic of the millennial underclass on Twitter as it wonders what our leaders have in store. I hope you and Peter are well. I like to think of the two of you walking the cobblestones of Nordebro, arm in arm, talking about all there is to know. It calms me down a little to think of you. On this side, we are gorging on stories of love, hope, and remorse in the end times, as seen on Netflix, our fingers seeking those of our lovers in the textured dark. The culture here is irretrievably doused in oil and beliefs, whose course, until fire is finally upon it with flames to our very doors, none of us notices. Like the protest of Buddhists a half-century past, you remember, sitting in public like lotuses, their tangerine robes darkened and heavy with petrol, waiting for the light. Thank you to the first responders to this book, to Entity and Kirby and Arlene and Philip and Daniel. Luke, thank you. Shane, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and to all the readers here. That was really wonderful. I always, when you have a chance to engage these things first on the page, you spend so much time in them. It's really wonderful to hear people read from them, sort of put all that hard work out somewhere for you to actually experience. It's really wonderful. And I don't know if you're paying attention to the live transcripts as it goes along here. But I love how badly it can't cope with poetry. anything that's a homonym just totally disappears. It's beautiful. So we're going to do a little time for Q&A here. And I have some things sent in to me already, which is amazing. If you would like to have a question asked of the authors, feel free to send it to me directly. I'm happy to take your suggestions and get them out there. The first question is to MLA, and it's about to what extent are your poems written with a specific persona in mind as the speaker, or to what extent are they meant to be performed and read aloud? So two sort of connected things there.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. In terms of persona, I think there are many personas at play. Just in terms of, I don't know, for SQUELCH procedures, a true SQUELCH procedure for me was letting the words live their own dang lives and seeing where that went. So it wasn't so much, a lot of people use the term like free association, and I feel as though that didn't come necessarily from like a particular set of subjectivities within myself, but it was like walking alongside the words themselves. And just the attentiveness to the sound. So very much, yeah, meant to be read and performed. But the, you know, a quiet reading is in itself a performance when you just sit down on your sofa, your futon. If you have a futon, you can read it, and that's the mise en scene, and you just have a fun time with it. What was the second part of the question? Like, did I answer all of it? Or is it okay?
The question I'd follow that up with is if there's a lot of it that's really you're writing a plays up to that performance. On the other hand, there are elements of it that are purely visual, right? Like, you know, emojis and whatnot. So what's the interplay of that for you? How do you balance those things out?
So far, in most of my performances of this text, I have completely skipped over the emoji and just I've just prioritized reading aloud and not trying to complicate things by making this what I think emojis sound like, which is, but at the same time, I don't know, intonations are very important, and how I scream words aloud, or I was going to do little beep boops that I like making noise during, some squelches, some live DJ squelches, but I couldn't do that today. Yeah, the interplay, I don't know. I'm still working on my performance praxis, so we'll see where that goes.
Thanks. Kevin, one for you. How much of you reference a lot of specific people and places as you go along? How much of your poetry is connected with the space where you are in London and the people there?
I guess, yeah, the question of autobiography. Much of it is invented entirely. There are lots of sort of places in the book that are mentioned that I haven't been to physically. There are also poems that have been inspired by immediate experience, particularly by Deshkan Zibi or Antler River in London. At the risk of dissatisfaction, it varies.
Well, Roxana just asked in the chat whether you're channeling genius dead people or ... How do you respond to that? Are you channeling genius dead people? Yay or nay?
I'm gonna plead the fifth, I think.
Okay, and Shane wants to follow up. He says the question posed less about autobiography and more so about being, as in how does it reflect the place of London infusing you itself?
Well, I'd say that there's a vibrant community of writers in London that I've been very fortunate to be part of, and whose constituents I've been very fortunate to know, some of whose faces I can see at this moment. I'm thinking of Frank Beltrano and Celia Englert and Liz Merwin, and I can see Lynn Tate. There are many, many writers in town and people who contribute to the literary community here. Aaron is a good example of one for his work with the Thames Review. There are a couple of reading series that have been in operation for some time. One, Poetry London, now Antler River Poetry, stewarded by Karen Schindler, largely begun by Cornelia Hublin. So as a practice, I think writing has often felt like a community practice, a communal practice, both with the dead and with the living, maybe without distinction between those two groups. In terms of the city itself or this area, particularly the last year has compelled reflection for me, having to do with, relating to this space, to this place, particularly to the river Deshkamzibi that I mentioned, which inspired a number of poems in the book, and which has become a kind of metaphor for me, I think, that I relate to often, that has to do with pace and gentleness.
Thank you, sir. Aaron, a couple of questions, both in a similar direction, so I'm going to summarize them here, having to do with why it is, what sort of brought you to use those charts and whatnot as a connection to your fiction. What kind of inspired those that move?
I mean, I might as well give the long answer. There's a detour here through like Argentinian literary theory. Like 10 years ago, I read Ernesto Sabato's On Heroes and Tombs, and then after that, which I liked, and then I read his book. I always get this wrong. I can never remember whether it's the novelist in the catastrophe of our time or the writer in the catastrophe of our time, which is about the position of the writer in the world. And he's a physicist as well as a writer, and he kind of laments the 18th century split between science and the arts, and posits the novel as something that can sort of resuture that division. And that kind of got me thinking about a kind of artificial divide that we often draw between certain modes of knowing and understanding the world. And around the same time, I started teaching a science writing class, which involved teaching things like scientific charts. And the thing that I read to you today, the are not values, is a take on essentially a scientific poster, right? And so if you put those two things together and stir for a while, the product was starting to think about how you can take other ways that people communicate outside of conventional prose and poetry and start to incorporate them in a way that isn't just about irony or like criticism of scientific modes of thought and understanding, but actually uses them to achieve kind of meaningful literary effects. I think that and this may be a simplistic way to think about it, but I did think about it this way, but like writing the book, I thought that would be an interesting challenge to see if you can take something like a chart, which is usually this very neutral and very cold way of conveying information, right? Like I teach a lot of different classes, but if I teach like a presentations course to science students, I tell them like you can't put too many charts in your presentations because you'll bore your audience. Because no one's moved by a chart really, but to take that cold and neutral kind of infographic and see if you can add emotional weight and force to it. See if it can convey feeling in the way that like the closing lines of a good short story can convey feeling. So that's a kind of long answer, but that's hopefully laying out some of the way I thought myself to that point and produce some of those things, if that makes sense.
Thanks so much, Aaron. So unless people have anything really pressing, that's the end of the questions people have put in. So you got about like 30 seconds to get something to, Aaron, I get one right at the end here. So Aaron, I want to follow up for you. You explained a little about how teaching scientific writing influenced the creation of this book. Is there any way that the working of the university affects the tone and content and the style?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Like, yes. Yeah, I think that there's, so when you work in a university, you get access to very specific modes of writing, right? There's particular ways that academics write. Emphasis on ways plural, because I bridge, although I'm located in the arts and humanities and teach in a writing program, I work a lot with science profs and they don't write at all like arts and humanities people. So being close to that gives you access to very specific discourses and the capacity to learn and inhabit those and then reproduce them in writing. So yeah, I would say to that extent, yes.
Thanks. So yeah, we're gonna sort of end things on that. Thank you for everybody who came to participate. Thanks for the authors who read. It's been really wonderful to chat with you. I've just put in the chat now. Please you can grab all 3 of those books together as a bundle and save yourself a few dollars if you're into that. Please do, be in touch with the authors and let them know how much you appreciate what they did. I know that they love to hear from you. And keep in touch on our Twitter and Facebook. Pay attention, because each of the authors will have other events coming up that you can join and participate in. Some of them even sort of live, if that's possible for you. We'd love to have you join those things. So thanks again. Thanks for participating. We'd love to have you, and hopefully we'll see you at future events.
I find the shedding strangely sad and beautiful. It's like a flower depetaling, just love.
One after the other into the ether.
Who's gonna hang up first? Who's gonna hang up first? What's going on? You hang up. No, I'll hang up. No.
Well, I have the power to make you all hang up anytime I want. Just click. That could happen.
Bully.
Very authoritarian. I like it.
Except that it feels sort of weird to do so. This is actually the weirdest part of all the Zoom meetings, is sort of the startings where everyone sits and looks awkwardly at each other as we wait for everyone to show up, and the endings where you sort of look at each other awkwardly as we wait for each to go away. It's so bizarre.
I'm gonna take off. Bye, guys.
All right, see you guys.
Bye. So bad.
Gonna wait you
I
all.
held it in. Thanks, everyone. That was so fun. Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye, Emily and Kevin. Great readings, both of you.
That was fantastic. We all did a great job. Thanks for your enthusiasm, Roxana. There was I saw the chat and I was like, whoa. Nice. Okay, bye.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
See ya.